I've seen a lot of wonderful fillies running over the years, but nobody ever had her charisma, her presence, and that unbelievable gift of speed that so few horses have in any kind of abundance like that. She was just a freak of nature. She was huge and black and elegant. She looked like a black swan, and her neck was arched, and she had that beautiful head and those beautiful ears, and that little white spot and she came walking down that little ramp into the saddling area, and people parted like the Red Sea. All of his career, people kept saying, well, he can go 6 furlongs, but he can't go 7/8. Then they win at 7/8. Then he can't go a mile. He'd run it a mile. Then he can never go a mile in a 16th. He'd win at a mile in a 16th. Oh, he can't win the Derby. There's no way Foolish Pleasure can get a mile and a quarter. Then he wins the Derby. Both horses were coming to the match race. It looked superbly. Here was the Kentucky Derby winner, and here was the filly that had just won the Triple Crown for fillies. The 2 best 3-year-olds in America, easily. And it appealed to the large crowds of men and women. This is the days of the battle of feminism, and Ms. Magazine, and women getting out and working and fighting for their rights. And it had a mass appeal to the public. I mean, here was the guy against the girl, the filly against the colt. Who was going to win? Who was better? Actually, it had nothing to do with women's rights whatsoever, but that was what they sold it on. You talk about literally pins and needles. This place was crackling with excitement and energy in the hours leading up to this race. It was one of the most exciting sporting events that I have ever come to in anticipation of. Everybody wanted her to run well. Everybody wanted everybody to run well. May the best horse win. She had never been behind in a race. Every single pole she was in front. You look at her past performances today, and it's all ones until you get to this race. And then it's one again, because she's in front of him, going down the backside, when a pigeon flew up in front of her. You can see it on the film. A pigeon flew up in front of her, and just at that moment, she broke down. And everybody it was like a thunderclap had gone off above everyone, and it just stone cathedral silence fell on the racetrack. A cathedral silence. It was, nobody could believe it. I dashed from the clubhouse box seat area down that staircase and ran out a tunnel to the track, and a guard stopped me. And he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going across the racetrack. That filly's broken down over there." He says, "You can't go over there." I said, "Oh, yes, I can." And all of a sudden, a flock of photographers came running up next to me, about 10 feet away. And the guard went over to them. And when the guard went over to them, I went under the rail, and I started across the crown of the racetrack, and somebody screamed at me, "Watch yourself." And I froze, and I heard the sound of hoofbeats. And I looked to my left, and here came Foolish Pleasure, going 40 miles an hour. I heard the jock yell, "Hey!" And I looked, and I froze, and he came running by me. And I swear to this day, I could almost feel the wind. And I got a flash. Ruffian breaks down, subhead, reporter killed by Foolish Pleasure. She had broken down. Probably the adrenaline was blocking the pain, but she looked confused. She looked scared. Those big, beautiful eyes were as wide as they could possibly be, and you could see the whites around them. And she was looking around like in a bit of a panic. And she couldn't put her foot down on that leg. And Manuel Gilman was bent over her, and he was putting that inflatable cast on. And I said, "What's the prognosis?" And he says, "Not good." And that's when I sagged. I went, "Oh no, we're going to lose her." And everybody was trying to do the right thing by her, and she was standing in that stall on this dirty straw. and people were running all around, and she had that panicky look on her face. And I just turned around. I was standing right in front of her stall, and I just turned around and I kind of walked away. I said, "This is hopeless." You could just see her; she was shivering, and there was that wailing, and she looking out at Mrs. Janney crying. It was just one of the most dramatic, saddest moments that I've ever experienced on the racetrack. True human drama, and set in terms of the equine. When she came out of the anesthetic and she had the cast on, like a child will do coming out of an anesthetic in a dentist's office, started screaming. And you come out of this sleep screaming, and she was whinnying and she was thrashing and throwing guys off the walls like rag dolls. I mean, you got an 1,100-pound animal here who's coming out of unconsciousness and is not sure where she is or what has happened to her. Her last memory is really being trucked over there, and she doesn't know what's going on, and she just went into a fit, which is always a danger with a horse, with an animal that size, and she started running. She came out of the anesthetic running, like that's what she remembered. And the cast hurt her elbow. She broke her elbow. And so they had to put her down. They had no choice. They couldn't operate her. They couldn't put her under anesthetic again. You can only do that for so long with anybody, man, woman, child, racehorse. And so the decision was made by Mr. Janney that they would put her down. It was one of the most incomplete, unsatisfying experiences that I've ever had. It was just the unfinished symphony of horse racing in my lifetime. And I try to picture today what would have happened if that filly had not broken those sesamoids. And I think they would have run all the way down to the wire together. That's what I think would have happened. Because she wasn't going to go much faster than 7 and change when he went 3/4 of a mile. But she wasn't going to quit in 7 and change either. And she'd have hung right in there with him. And it would have been the horse that would have won would have been the horse with the most guts. Because that what would have taken the last 220 yards. Who's got the most guts? Who's least afraid? Who's least afraid of pain? Because they were both going to be gasping at that point. And the horse that backed off would have been the second best horse. That would have been it. I love horse racing. I have since I was a kid. I regard myself as a historian of the sport, and a keeper of several of its flames, and including hers. And it turned me off to the sport for a while. I started thinking about it, and it took that little penumbra of romance that always rimmed that sport for me, and it disappeared. It lost the sense of romance, the glow of romance that the sport had for me from when I was a kid. And not too long after that, I left full-time horse racing to become a sports columnist, and then went to Sports Illustrated. But I still love the sport, and I still love covering it. But that's one of the last times I did it full-time.